I declare the motion passed.
根據
Two motions under the LegCo Powers and Privileges Ordinance. Mr. Wong Yuk-man and Ms. Andrew Leung have respectively given notice to move a motion under the LegCo Powers and Privileges Ordinance. As both motions are about issues relating to recent People's Assemblies, this Council will proceed to a joint debate on the two motions. I will first of all call upon Mr. Wong Yuk-man to speak and move his motion, and then call upon Mr. Andrew Leung to speak, but he may not move his motion at this stage. After the joint debate, this Council will first put to vote Mr. Wong Yuk-man's motion. Irrespective of whether Mr. Wong's motion is passed, Mr. Leung may move his motion. The joint debate now begins. Members who wish to speak on the two motions will please press the request to speak button. I now call upon Mr. Wong Yuk-man to speak and move his motion. Mr. Wong, please. President, the police allow the thugs to use violence. This umbrella movement was student-led. In a single month, it spread all over Hong Kong. The peaceful demonstration for democracy has been written into history. On 28th of September, on Connaught Road, Chater Road, near the City Hall, the police fired tear gas at unarmed protesters. People were galvanized to take over Mong Kok near Argyle Street. Admiralty Causeway Bay were also taken over by the protesters. They have taken over these sites for long-term protest. The movement has been around for a month. In Mong Kok, the confrontations are more than in other parts of Hong Kong. The occupiers are still indomitable. They are still in high spirit. In April in 2014, during the debate on whether to strip Mr. Leung Kwok-hong's membership here, I said that under the control of the Communist Party, the democratic path is really fraught with difficulties. And they are put in a very passive position, and they are they hope that the Democrats would be behaving themselves. And however, the non-violent parties are likely to be victimized. The Hong Kong SL government is an autocratic government. The protesters in Mong Kok were tear gassed, they were batoned, they faced the risk of vehicles plowing into them. They faced the triad elements and falling objects from height. But they are really fighting fit, and they put on the goggles and they put up barricades, and they're politically aware of the situation. The young people in Hong Kong are joining part in this Occupy movement en masse, and they move away from the conventional way of fighting for democracy, and they're fighting for their future. I urge those young people who are occupying Mong Kok to stick it out to the end. For all of us, 56-year-olds, we don't have the right to determine your own future or how the future of our democratic system should go. Since CY Leung became chief executive, there were triad elements being involved. In 2012, during outside LegCo, 2013 at the Tin Shui Wai Forum, Mr. Joseph Len said that CY Leung is a product of the bad elements. After the umbrella movement, the police failed to clear the scenes. On the 3rd of October, there were thugs who went to the Mong Kok occupied zone and moved in on the protesters, tearing away the tents. There were people who attacked the protesters and also molested the female occupiers. The police turned a blind eye to the thuggish behavior. It wasn't until people fell over that the police found out and separated the two sides. Some occupiers were beaten on the head. They were bleeding all over their head, and the police condoned this kind of violence. The clean image of the police is out of the window. In the 70s, in the last century, after the ICAC was established, the police have been enforcing the law in a fair manner. They have shaken off their image of being criminals in uniforms. But the police have abused the power to deal with the occupiers. And there were horrific cases of the police abusing their power, and the resentment against the police has increased. On the 3rd of October, the clearance action by the police and the thugs will leave an indelible impression on the people of Hong Kong for a long time to come. The police do enjoy the power, but these powers should be fettered. The police duties to maintain law and order should not be used without any limits, because otherwise it would be detrimental to human rights. And the police abuse of power can be manifested in the form of selective law enforcement, and they are likely to collude with the bad elements, and the police power will become a tool that can be used indiscriminately. The capo is a toothless tiger, and the police don't really have any power to curb the police abuse of their power. In Mong Kok, the safety of the protesters was at risk. The police did not enforce the law and allow the situation to worsen, and this is a form of power abuse. And they are depriving people of the right to express themselves, and they are jeopardizing the life and limbs of the people. The media reports that said that the police were aware of some triad elements moving in on the occupiers, but we only had the uniformed police and the emergency units that were there. The police presence was a far cry from that in Admiralty. The police allowed the thugs to move in on the occupiers without doing anything to stop it. There were injured people who were arrested from the Tung-kwok hospital. They were taken to the police station. The police action is really lenient to the thugs. They were very harsh on the protesters. Many members of the public came forward and supported the occupiers, and they surrounded the thugs. Ms. Zhao Suk-ping, the author, the award-winning author, wrote to say that there was an anti-occupier who was surrounded by the occupiers, but this guy was escorted out of the scene. It is mind-boggling. Myself and some of my volunteers attended the rallies, and we saw this happen ourselves. For those anti-occupiers, they were arrested and they were set free. There may not be any collusion, but the government is really condoning the thugs. The Wall Street Journal interviewed one of the policemen, and it was said that the policemen are resentful of the demonstrators, and they're glad to see that the thugs are moved in on the protesters. And they were taunting the protesters themselves. I mean, I can't help thinking about Mrs. Regina Ip. You are welcomed by the police. You turn up at the police reception. You will be given a rapturous applause, like me being given a rapturous applause by the students. Now, she said that shouldn't the tear gas be fired in the park? And I can't really stomach the remark that the police did not really overstep the line. Now, I was there. I was tear gassed myself, Mrs. Ip. Were you there on the scene? In Mong Kok, were you there in the scene? And you are making the remarks that you did. I mean, the government officials are always putting their foot in the mouth. Dr. Hon Wong Yuk-man, he was shooting his mouth off, and he's saying that those who break the law should not expect the police to enforce the law to protect them. I'd like to put this to Dr. Ko. Those who have lung cancer, they are smokers, and you say that you are a smoker, I'm not going to treat you, I'm not going to cure you. Is this a logical argument? I think you're really standing a logic on its head. The police are wielding the power, and they have to act cautiously in accordance with the law. It is simple as that. They have to enforce the law in accordance with the law. Turning back to the Wall Street Journal interview, the policeman said that they're not trying not to help the protesters, but they just let the thugs beat them for a while longer. The Commissioner of Police, Andy Leung, tried very hard to crack down on rallies and demonstrations. We can't believe that the police would be fair and just in the execution of their power. There are more and more retired inspectors who are joining the local communist activities. In July, there was a police union who said that policemen can take part in this signature petition in their personal capacity. Those more junior frontline policemen, can they remain neutral? Can they remain impartial? I doubt it. In this police thug joint crackdown of the protesters, there was a case of a policeman beating up a protester. Now we saw some suspects being meted out horrific punishment. This is more like a torture. In Mong Kok, I mean, we saw the selective enforcement of the law. The police power is used at the whim of the policeman. It shows that there is a lack of discipline on the part of the law enforcement agencies. The Security Secretary held a press conference to say that 8 of those arrested had triad background, and he rejected any allegation of police triad collusion. And he said that this is unfair to the frontline officers who are enforcing the law. On October the 15th, at LegCo meeting, some members raised urgent questions. They questioned whether the police failed to collect enough intelligence, or whether they failed to deploy the right number of policemen, and why they failed to arrest the perpetrators. The government said it would be difficult to protect the safety of the people in a chaotic situation. The first priority is to prevent the situation from worsening, and 52 people have been arrested. The Secretary for Security said a lot, but failed to talk about the deployment of police manpower. He failed to tell us the backgrounds of the 50 people who were arrested. On that day, if the police could deploy sufficient manpower, they would have been able to prevent violence from happening, and they could have arrested the perpetrators. The Secretary's reply evaded the fact that the police escorted the perpetrators away from the scene. It would be difficult to assuage people's concerns and doubts about the police and triad collusion. At the security panel meeting, the Secretary played some footages. You are being selective. I have reason to doubt that you are faking it. And I think you merely selected some that were to your favor. Now, if you fake the footages, then your head will roll. I mean, in Hong Kong, heads will not roll, and you will only see further promotion. You can be smirking further. I mean, you do wield the power. You can do whatever you like with it. But in Hong Kong, to this day, it is lucky that we still have a rather independent judiciary. Otherwise, we'll all be doomed. After this event, there will be retribution. A lot of us will find ourselves in court. But otherwise, we will definitely be doomed. And this is playing for everybody. On Monday, at the security panel meeting, you were still so arrogant, and you failed to respond to our questions, and you failed to address the issue of police and triad collusion. Are you worthy of being a security for security? We should invoke the powers and privileges ordinance and set up a select committee and make the government give an account of everything, including the government's assessment of the Mong Kok situation, the field commander's instruction, and the way the policemen escorted the perpetrators away from the scene, and people's lives are at risk. Now, whether you support the Occupy movement or not, you do have the obligation to monitor the government and keep the government on its toes. Mr. Wong, please move your motion. I move that the motion be passed.
I now propose the question to you, and that is that the motion moved by Mr. Wong Yuk-man be passed. Mr. Andrew Leung. President.